Hey guys, I'm Gary, and this is your exclusive movie review of Netflix Bruised. So, when it comes to sports films, I am not really a fan of them. Not in particular with like football or baseball or any kind of those sports. I'd like to see myself enjoying hockey movies, but there's not very many of those. But I really find myself fascinated and intrigued. Sports movies about fighting, about boxing, about kickboxing, about UFC. A few in particular are The Hurricane with Denzel Washington, Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe, and The Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. They're very emotionally impactful, I find. Those kinds of movies, they have a lot of substance. It's not just about the fighting aspect of it, right? There's quite a bit of fighting in them, for sure. But these movies, they focus more on the individual, their character, their families, and it's just and their struggle to overcome these massive obstacles that just seem impossible to, well, overcome. So here we are with the film Bruised, directed by Halle Berry and written by Michelle Rosenfarb. As I watched the trailer for Bruised, I thought it was a comeback film for Halle Berry. And in my mind, I pictured this film as more of a carbon copy of movies that I've seen in the past, much like Warrior. I thought it was just like a woke female version of Warrior. And I was wrong. This movie was fantastic. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought Halle Berry's performance in this movie was just spectacular. Honestly, I've seen Monsters Ball. I've seen her in the X-Men movies. I've seen her in a bunch of other things. But you know what? Honestly, I think by far this is her best work. You could say that some of the emotional stuff is a little bit forced, but when you look at her character and what she's gone through throughout this film, before this film starts, you really understand her character and what she went through. This movie is generally about this great UFC fighter that basically lost one of her last fights, was completely embarrassed by it. She wasn't prepared, and she just fell off the face of the earth. She became a housemaid, an alcoholic. She started hanging out with really bad, abusive boyfriends. One night, her son ends up at her door, her estranged son, after I think it was 4 years. 4 years of not being in the UFC, 4 years of not fighting. Not a very short time later, she realizes that she has to get back into the ring. She's got to support this kid now. I don't know how to explain it. I was pretty pleasantly surprised at how good this movie was. Incredible character development. Like, the story was detailed as if it was a true story. They really emphasize characters that are not in the movie for very long at all. There's a few trainers. One of the owners of the manager of the training facility that she's in. She gets close with her, and there's a relationship there, a very short-lived one. But you have your old man trainer dude that's like in the corner with a towel giving her advice, and like every character in this film shines. They're not necessarily just throwaway characters. There was a scene, several scenes in this film where Halle Berry's character and the manager of the gym, you can tell that there was a bit of a, you could tell that that was coming, that there was a forced relationship there of like, intimacy. And it was just, you feel like it was just there to satisfy uh, the woke community. And like the scene was very short lived. They had a moment. That moment passed, and that moment got rejected. I just feel like, you could have hinted at some sort of intimacy there and not really put the big sex scene in there. Yes, I mean, it's always nice to see Halle Berry's breasts. I don't know, for the kind of movie that it was, it didn't really need that sex scene. Yes, it's supposed to show how raw the film is. I mean, you can see how raw the film is emotionally, regardless of that scene. But I guess you could say that that adds a little extra spice to maybe somebody else's perspective, but not necessarily mine. I love the interaction between Halle Berry and the little boy. In this movie, the boy doesn't talk at all, right? He's gone through a traumatic experience, and just, it's not like he can't talk, he just unwilling to talk because you can tell he just feels that he can't trust anybody. There's no one out there he can trust. He's not going to open his mouth out to anybody. And you can tell, like, Halle Berry, even though frustrated with it, can still relate to it to some aspect. And so they just work with it. And she spends time with this boy trying to get to know him, and you could really tell in the beginning of this movie she was a character or a person in this film that could really care less about any other kid other than her own. So as soon as this boy is on her doorstep, it's just a completely 180, almost a 180 thought of how she thinks in terms of like getting back on her feet, becoming a fighter again. And when I was talking about detail, it wasn't just about characters and what they went through, but it was really like the fighting sequences, how she trains. I mean, you see some of these things that what she's doing in boxing movies or fighting movies all the time, but they really get down and dirty with some of the grappling moves on the floor. They really kind of show you how to maneuver with your opponent in the ring. And there's a good 20 or so minutes at the end of this movie that they really uh, express this. They really show you that, and it was it was exciting to watch. It's one of these movies where it's a little bit of a slow burn. There's a lot going on, but it's not super exciting all the way through. There's a lot of ups and downs, right? With certain characters, they just they come and go, and you can tell Halle Berry's character is really, she's really learning throughout the process of this movie who she can trust and who she can't trust. And she realizes that there's not a lot of other people she can trust other than herself. This was a fantastic movie. I would have to put it on my list of great fighting films, great fighter films. And I urge you guys to check this out. I mean, honestly, the end of the movie, I was teary eyed, to be honest with you. Like, with movies like this, with inspirational movies, especially inspirational movies that really dive deep in character development, I get teary eyed. I get emotional about them. And this is definitely one of them. But this is definitely a movie where there are certain obstacles that are successful, and this movie wasn't really about winning. This was accepting what was and just trying to improve upon oneself and not worrying about, the exterior successful side of things. Right? You can really be a successful person if you really find out who you are as a person, I believe. And right, at the end of the day, it's not winning or the losing. It's the experience and what you learn during that process. And I think that's what this movie is about. It's not just about the climax or the end game of everything. It's really about the journey and what you've learned throughout that journey. It wasn't about getting from point A to point B. It was about A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, all the way up to A10. It was about all those little steps. So who gives a shit about what A is and what B is? It's about all those little journeys in between. That's how I found this film. So I urge you guys to check this out. It's a really good movie. It's on Netflix. Halle Berry directed it, and she did a fantastic job. Thank you for watching. Please share. If you agree or disagree, put a comment down below me.